100% this bike is worth it.
How's it going, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to another video. Before we get into the video, I'd appreciate if you guys can go drop a sub. We did 1,500 subscribers in less than a month, and we're going up fast. Also, if you guys are enjoying the videos, I'd appreciate if you could drop a like. Helps me out a ton, and it costs you nothing. For those of you that are new to the channel, this is my 2020 Husqvarna 701. All right, so getting right into it, what am I going to talk about today? So I'm going to talk about how much the bike cost me out the door, what I paid for the bike. I'm going to talk about how much this bike costs to insure. I'm going to talk about maintenance costs, as well as I'm going to talk about things like tires and upgrades for this bike. All right, so jumping right into the number you guys want to hear, how much did I pay for the bike? So there's a couple things to take into account. It's not just MSRP and that's what you pay for the bike out the door. So the base price of the bike, the technical price of the bike, was $11,875. Then there's a few more things you got to add to that. There was a document processing charge, that was $85. Then there was vehicle transfer charge, that's $30. And then the sales tax on this bike was a painful $1,046. That's about what I paid for my Honda Blackbird, and just in sales tax. And then you just have the California registration, that was a total of $270 as well. So out the door cost, that brings the total to $13,306 is what I paid out the door. Which that definitely is a lot of money for a dirt bike. You can buy, with $13,000, you can buy a used S1000, you could get a pretty nice CBR 1000. $13,000 for a dirt bike is definitely a lot of money. I'm going to tell you guys later in the video why I think that is worth every penny. So now jump into insurance. I was actually extremely surprised with this bike. If you saw the video of me picking up, I was blown away with the insurance cost. Before this bike, I had a Honda Blackbird, a 1999 1100cc sport bike, super fun bike, super fast, but the insurance for that bike was absurd. It was a couple $100 a month to get any type of coverage. Not even, I had liability on that bike just because it was an older bike, wasn't worth much, and even liability was still fairly expensive. This bike, full coverage with medical payments, everything you can get on insurance for this bike was $48 a month, which just blows me away. I do have a clean driving record at the moment, so that's probably helping, but I paid like 30 something for my KTM, which was a $2,000 or $3,000 bike. This is a $13,000 bike, and I'm paying $5 or $10 more in insurance, which is crazy to me. But I guess it's because it's such a new bike with ABS and all that type of stuff. And if these bikes go down, there really isn't that much that's going to get damaged. You're going to damage your bar ends, maybe skid plate, something like that. But these bikes really don't get messed up when they go down. And that kind of brings me into my next point, maintenance cost. Maintenance cost for these bikes is extremely low because at the end of the day, it's a dirt bike. It's not going to have 4 cylinders, a full fairing, all the stuff that's makes it hard to work on bikes is gone on these. They're super simple. Everything is right here. Everything's easy to work on. The only thing that kind of sucks about this bike is the oil is definitely expensive. It's KTM Husqvarna oil, so oil is expensive. I don't want to just go get the O'Reilly 1040 stuff that I put in my sport bikes that's super cheap. But for this bike, I'm going to run the OEM Husky KTM oil, which is definitely a little expensive, but still, at the end of the day, super minimal. Another thing you have to take into account when you're looking for a bike, how expensive are the tires? Luckily, this bike, the tires are definitely not cheap by any means because you're going to run a high performance street tire, so they're going to be expensive. But that being said, it's a 160 in the rear, 120 in the front, so there's a ton of tires available in that size. And it's also the cheaper of the tires. It's not the 190, that's the more expensive tire, like for a CBR 1000 or S1000 or something like that. So the tires are slightly cheaper, but at the end of the day, it's still going to be a super sport tire, so they're not cheap by any means. I think people have been saying they're getting around 2,000 to 5,000 miles out of these tires, and I want to say they're about 400 mounted. So they're not cheap by any means, but my Honda Blackbird, the tires were almost 600. So they're not on the top of the spectrum. They're definitely not on the bottom. They're mid to upper. As I said in the beginning when I was talking about the price of the bike, the sales tax on this bike is what my last bike cost me, which is pretty insane to think about the difference there. My last bike was a great bike, but the reason I think it's worth it to go with the new bike that was 13 times more money is I've had to do nothing to this bike. I bought it, I put the key in it, and I go ride. My Honda Blackbird, I bought it, and I probably spent 16 hours of labor of flushing all the fluids, stripping it down, cleaning everything, greasing everything. Everything on it was old and rusty and needed tires, needed brake pads. All the fluids had to be flushed. All the lines on it were kind of crappy. All the fuel lines needed to be replaced. To me, it's worth it to spend the money and have a bike. Everything on this thing is brand new. All the fluids are brand new, all the hoses are brand new. I know every single time it's been ridden, it's been warmed up. It's that peace of mind, to me, I think is worth spending the money for. Even buying a used 701, I really didn't want to go that route for the exact same reason. Like a 2016 or a 2017. The knowing that I'm the only person that's ever warmed this bike up and it's been done properly every time is just a great peace of mind to have. And I think it's worth the extra money. Now getting into the one thing I do not like about this bike. The aftermarket support is awful because it's a 2020, it's a brand new bike. There's almost no used parts available, like on Craigslist or Facebook. Like a lot of my older bikes, I would run a used pipe because I'm more the type of person to go ride bikes, wreck them, have fun, and not really care about pristine perfect. So I could get a used pipe for $50-$200 and it would work great, sound amazing. It was just a little scuffed up. This bike, that's not really an option. There's very, very limited aftermarket support for them because they're such a new bike. Like the KTM 525, there's parts all day long for that bike, all over, used. You could go find a parts bike cheap. They're just kind of in the same idea. Everything you do to this bike is expensive, basically. KTM 525, you can get a tune or you can get a carb kit for it extremely cheap. You can do plastics extremely cheap. Decal kit, there's 1,000 decal kits available. These bikes, the decal kits that are available are extremely expensive because there's only a few people making them because it's such a new bike. Seat covers, there's only a couple people making seat covers. They're extremely expensive compared to the older bikes. You can get a seat cover on eBay for $20 that works great. So that's kind of the only thing that I haven't really liked about the bike is everything to do with it cost a lot of money just because their aftermarket support isn't really there yet. But overall, I'm extremely happy with buying this bike. I do not regret a single penny of what I've spent. It makes me feel like I'm such a better rider than I was on the KTM, and I've put barely any time on it. On the KTM, it took me months and months and months before I was comfortable on that bike. This bike, throw your leg over it, feel comfortable immediately because all the ergonomics are just so perfect. As well as the ABS and the traction control, everything on it just works so well. It just makes the riding experience so much better. I cannot stress it enough. It is definitely worth spending the money to get a new bike.
And guys, if you own a 701, I know a lot of you guys that watch own 701s. How you turn off the traction control, it took me a while to figure this out. You hold the TC button for exactly 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There you go. Now we're ready to party. I'll show you guys why I think it needs to be geared up. See, this is second gear. It'll come up, but I feel like I have to give it a lot of juice for a 700cc dirt bike. I feel like I shouldn't have to give it that much juice for a second gear seat wheelie. My KTM, I could get them to come up in 6th gear standing on the seat. I think these bikes are geared really tall from factory. Yeah, see, first gear seat wheelies, absolutely no problem. But second gear. But yeah, I think 100% it's worth it. This is definitely one of the best bikes I've ever ridden, and having the brand new bike makes me such a better rider and so much more confident, especially with all the traction control and ABS and everything like that. And just having the ergonomics on it are already good. It doesn't need a set of bars. It doesn't need tires, doesn't need a chain and a sprocket. Everything is brand new. So you get on the bike and you go ride and you go have fun. You don't have to worry about what parts you have on it. That's the biggest reason to get a new bike, is it just doesn't need anything. And like I said, it's so much safer, because this bike just handles and rides so much better. It allows me to have more control on the road. Like if you talk about value per dollar, my last bike I bought my Blackbird for $1,200. I think, and out the door after registration, and I've put a new set of tires on it, I think I was like $1,800 deep. That's like almost what the sales tax was for this bike. And that was an amazing bike. It was super fun.
But Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to check out the merch, and I will see you guys in the next one.